Morning everybody, welcome to IndyCar on a pretty rainy day in the west end of Glasgow here. So here we are on Tuesday the 7th of May, and it's actually been a very busy morning for me because the BBC and a lot of other people have, well, been making a lot of stupid reports this morning, and a lot of stupid statements have been made both by the BBC and other people about all manner of different things. So I thought I'd call out a few of them this morning while they're still fresh in my mind. The first one actually was on the BBC's breakfast news this morning. Not the breakfast news that you would watch that has the people sitting on the sofa, but the breakfast news that deals with business, so on News 24. And the one of the guests this morning on the programme was the boss of Cobra beer, a British brewing company run by an Indian gentleman who started his business in the 1980s. And Cobra beer, as you know, is the beer that you get when you go to an Indian restaurant anywhere in the UK. They usually offer Cobra beer because it's been specially brewed to complement curry and food. It's a smooth beer, not like a fizzy lager. Anyway, they interviewed this guy. The interview went very well, up to the point where they started asking him about Brexit. And he said, of course, he said Brexit is the worst possible thing that could happen to any business in the UK. And he said that that he was dead set against Brexit and it was a terrible idea. At which point the BBC's newsreader, an interviewer, jumped in and said, but you're in the minority there. And he said, no, I'm not. He said, every business leader in the United Kingdom is against Brexit. At which point, the newsreader abruptly changed the subject and the interview ended before he had a chance to say any more and reveal the fact that just about everybody in British business is against Brexit. However, that leads me on to the next bizarre story on the BBC this morning. And now this one wasn't on the television, but was on their media website. And this is a story about Bluebells, of all things. Now, it's strange that it should be about Bluebells because I was up in Aberfoyle on Saturday and walking in the forest park up there, and I wanted to go and see the Bluebells because this is the perfect time of year to see this carpet of blue throughout the natural forests of Scotland and indeed a lot of other parts of the UK. But what was being said on the BBC's website was remarkable. It was saying that British bluebells, and I use inverted commas here, the British bluebell was genetically superior to an invasive Spanish species called the Spanish bluebell, which is a white bluebell. Now, quite why this became so politicised in the BBC's reporting, I have no idea, but it came over as making bluebells into some kind of racist comment about the superiority of British flowers over these nasty continental invaders from Spain. And I had to smile this morning when I saw this because it's been widely known for years that where the two species come together, the Spanish bluebell and the British bluebell, as it were, the native species, that they do hybridize, they do mix together, they cross-pollinate and become a new hybrid species, which is a kind of pale pinky blue colour sometimes. So there is a slight risk of hybridization, but only if the two come into direct contact. That's very, very rare because most of these Spanish bluebells are in people's gardens. They're basically a species which is brought in as a special sort of treat, if you like, for the gardener. They're quite rare. But anyway, it just struck me as a bizarre statement for the BBC writers to make this morning. And that leads me sort of neatly into another Brexit story, which is from Bloomberg this morning. Now, Bloomberg is the international financial both publisher and news agency. It's a bit like Reuters, but for the financial world. And Bloomberg today was saying that Nigel Farage has got some serious questions to answer about the things he said on the night of the Brexit vote. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat this morning. Oh, nasty French frog. Anyway, Farage had said, just before the polls claimed, he indicated that he was conceding defeat, that it looked like, as he put it, that the Remain vote was going to edge it. And this was said just before the polls closed. And it was a strange thing to say before the count had finished. And it turns out now that Farage and all his hedge fund managers and all his buddies who were short selling the British pound at this moment made millions and millions of pounds from watching the value of the pound soar just as he said this at the point where the polls closed and the markets across the world thought that Brexit had failed, and Farage gave the impression that it had. Everybody in Farage's immediate circle of friends and associates started to sell pounds, and they cleaned up because the pound had shot up over $1.50. It then plunged on the actual result of the real vote. So Nigel Farage has a lot of questions to answer, according to Bloomberg's report today. And it looks as though he may have just deliberately used the entire Brexit vote as a means of making money for himself and his associates, and actually had never any intentions of winning it at all. It was all about making money. Anyway, that remains to come out in the wash if Farage ever is questioned. I doubt, frankly, whether that will happen in the United Kingdom, given the fact that Farage is being basically boosted by the BBC at every cut and turn, as far as I can see. And that leads us back to Scotland, and the story that is basically on social media everywhere at the moment is the story of Mandeep Singh, who is, or was, the co-organiser of All Under One Banner. In the last two events that have been staged under All Under One Banner, there have been big problems with changes to either the routes, the rallying points, or the times of the marches and the rallies. Now these events are organised months in advance, usually a year in advance, by the organisers, who have to state the numbers, the route they want to take. It's all arranged with the authorities well in advance, with the police, with the parades authorities. Everything is laid down months in advance. And then at the last moment, the council, for some reason, decides to completely change the route, change the rules, change the number of marshals required at the last moment. This has been a pattern that's happened at every one of the last three independence marches. First of all, it was a change in the number of stewards at a previous Glasgow All Under One Banner march, where we were forced, if you remember, to have one steward for every 10 marchers. Now that meant in some cases having something like over 2,000 professionally trained stewards required by the Glasgow City Council before they would allow a march to take place. Now that was a very unreasonable request. It wasn't made of any other marches and parades of any size. And then last year at the Edinburgh Hands Off Air Parliament, was it last year? The Hoop event, Hands Off Air Parliament event in Edinburgh, which drew such massive crowds. Suddenly they changed the rallying point, the point at which people were supposed to meet was changed at the last moment. And Mandeep Singh decided that he was going to tell people that it was going to remain the same, even though he knew that both the council and the police had said no to it. He basically told a lie on the basis that it was probably easier, and I don't know what he was thinking at the time, but all I can tell you is that he felt that he didn't want to let people down and have them all change their plans and have the route completely changed and alter the numbers of people who could enter and leave it. Having sound stages in places was what was needed at the end of the rally, so that music and speeches could be made at the end of the rally. All of that was wrecked by the sudden change at the Hoop event. This year, Manny's attempts to get this huge, massive event underway were thwarted again at the last minute by the City Council putting another restriction on it, which was they were changing the time at which the march set off from 1:30 to 11 AM in the morning. Now, if the march had started at 11 AM in the morning, it would have been a long, thin string of people, because not everybody would have arrived, and the immediate effect of that, the visual effect of it, would have been far less than it is when you have 150,000 people all marching together. Now, Manny knew this, and I'm sure the City Council knew this, and I'm sure the police knew this as well, that it would drastically affect the impact of that event, and it would change the travel arrangements of hundreds of thousands of people all across Scotland at the last moment. People have said, oh, it didn't happen at the last moment, but it did. It happened on the 24th of April. Now, that left only 10 days for the entire event to be completely restructured and for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people's travel arrangements to be changed. And that's not realistic. When people have bought tickets well in advance of things to arrive at the right time and arrange to stay over or to meet with people in the city, you can't just change something that size at that short notice. And so Manny decided to go ahead with it. And again, he said that the police had okayed it and it was going ahead at the same time. He took another risk again because he didn't want the rally and the march to be diluted in this way yet again. Now, nobody really knows quite why. I mean, I've heard various stories about why the Parades Authority at Glasgow City Council decided not to let them go off at 1:30. Nobody even knows whether the SNP or the Green councillors had anything at all to do with this. I doubt it, because the parades officers and the parades committees, certainly in the days prior to the SNP, parades were decided by a civil servant who acted with the police and other parts of the council to decide on where a parade would go, how many people would be permitted, how many stewards had to be there, what the route was, etc, etc, etc. I don't know if that's still the case, but it's very strange that in all three events that have been staged, there has been a last-minute attempt to undermine the entire event at every single one of them. And this now culminating in Manny being arrested and charged under a rather sort of obscure civil law about organising events and parades, means that he now faces probably either a very short prison sentence or quite a big fine if he's found guilty. And if, and this is a big if the Procurator Fiscal thinks it's in the public interest to prosecute the man for something which has caused zero danger, no problems to anybody, there was no trouble on the day from anyone except one single, I'm talking one single British nationalist who ran into the street and tried to pull flags off motorbikes, causing one near accident. Now, that event, that one dangerous event, was nothing to do with All Under One Banner. That was to do with the counter demonstration, which, to be fair, was tiny. I mean, it was 80 people waving Union Jacks and shouting abuse. That was all it was. But this one guy trying to pull people off motorbikes in the middle of a busy street was a danger to everybody. And nobody's focusing on that. They're focusing on the man who organised the event, who went to enormous trouble to make sure that event went off peacefully, that it followed the route as planned, and it wasn't Manny who changed the rules at the last minute. So despite my opinion of Manny and his, the way he conducts himself, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what our opinions are of the man. Manny stuck to his guns. He has a combative style. He doesn't let authority figures push him around, and if you think then that is some kind of bad thing in a leader, well, sometimes you need a leader who's prepared to stick up for themselves and the event that they've organised and not be browbeaten into submission by a bunch of jobsworth down at the council. Remember, the police who conducted the stewarding of the event found absolutely no bad behaviour at all with any of the members of the parade. None, not a single one. The only people who misbehaved were in that 80 or so group of flag-waving unionist objectors who shouted and hurled abuse and spat at people, and the one man who was running out into the street, grabbing at motorcycles that were going past and nearly causing an accident. They are the people who should be in trouble here, not the organisers of the event. I may disagree with Manny's style of leadership sometimes, and the things he does often appear to other people as though he's trying to gain attention for himself. I think, to be fair to Manny, he is that sort of guy. He is the sort of person who will talk very eloquently about what he believes, and he sticks to his principles, and he is prepared to take the flak for whatever happens because of his decisions. He's never backed away from taking responsibility for the things that he's done, but he has taken some risks in the name of the movement, and I think, well, whether you like the man or not, you can't do anything but applaud his efforts. I mean, to organise an event on this scale over a year with so many complicated things to put together on the one day is quite a remarkable achievement. I know Manny doesn't work alone, and I know Neil Mackay is also co-convener of that movement, and there are many, many other volunteers, hundreds, thousands of people who volunteer to help set up these events. But I think this is a storm in a teacup. This business of what Manny said about leaving at 1:30 and the police agreeing to it, it's very difficult to take issue with him over this, because had it gone off at 11 o'clock, then the entire event would have been chaotic, because some people would have been coming at 1:30 anyway. Other people would have started at 11 o'clock. And it would have been a mess. It would have been too difficult to reorganise it at such short notice. 10 days isn't enough time to turn around a behemoth this size. It's like trying to turn a tanker around and take it back, you know, in the opposite direction. It takes a long time to turn something this big around. Anyway, those are my opinions. You may have your own, but I personally think that I don't have an issue with Manny Singh or his style of leadership. I don't always think that he does things simply you know, because he wants to appear at Burning Martin. I don't think that's true of the man. I think he is combative, and people don't like that sometimes. People want everything to be terribly civilised, but when the opposition to your plans for a democratically expressed demonstration in a public place, which has been organised months in advance, every legal loophole has been, every legal hurdle has been cleared, and every requirement fulfilled, to have it suddenly change like this, just a week and a bit before it's supposed to happen, I think is unreasonable. And in many ways I sympathise with Manny for taking this stand, and I know a lot of other people will do as well, because there are very few people in the movement prepared to put themselves on the line like this and take responsibility for a decision like that. In fact, most of the people in the council wouldn't have the backbone to take responsibility for what they've done, let alone you know, let alone what the council does. It's all terribly easy for the council to say, but you know, we did this in the best interests of safety. There were no safety breaches. Nobody was hurt, nobody was injured. The traffic closures were all planned in advance, and everything went off exactly as planned. A final footnote to this. The BBC, as usual, has been playing this down. They like to advertise the fact that Manny's under arrest, and they are still claiming, or should I say they're still saying, that the rally attracted only 35,000 attendants. Now, what the BBC has done is taken the figure of 35,000 who finally stayed at the rally point in Glasgow Green. That was the number of people who stuck around after the event was finished, was 35,000. And the BBC is putting that out there as being the entire number of people who went on the march, which we know is a load of rubbish. The BBC is just picking and choosing what it wants you to know, as usual, editing out the bits it doesn't like the fact that 150,000 people actually went marching, and the fact that a sizable proportion of them bothered to stay on in the park after the march was finished to hear the speeches and to listen to the music and to socialise. So that's it for today. A lot of mistruths and partial truths and downright lies, some financial fraud perpetrated by Nigel Farage, and probably dozens if not hundreds of hedge fund managers who benefited from the insider knowledge that Farage had obviously got through private polling before the Brexit vote was actually counted. I think maybe we should focus more on that, and the fact that the BBC is now racially politicising flowers. That's how stupid Brexit has become. Anyway, I'll see you all later. You'll notice I haven't mentioned once Meghan Markle or Prince Harry. and I'm not going to mention anything to do with anything that they have produced or anything that has come out of either of them at all, because I'm fed up hearing about it. I'll see you all later. Have a great day. Bye bye.